reversing anxiety in our kids. Now, I don't know about you, but it feels like those children who are struggling with anxiety, certainly in my line of business, they're getting younger and younger. My youngest client that struggles with worry and stress and things like that is 4 years old. Yeah, you heard that right, 4. So today in the podcast, what I'm going to do is we haven't got a guest, it's me. I'm going to give you some top tips. We're going to talk about what anxiety is, how it helps us, because it actually does, how that affects kids' bodies and ours. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking today is about primary kids, but it is still the same for us as adults, some of it, and also teens. Next week, I'm going to do you a teen podcast just for how do we manage anxiety in our teens. I'm going to say, how does it show up? And then I'm going to give you some top tips on how to reverse anxiety in our kids. Now, I'm Ashley Costello, psychotherapist here at The Resilient Kid. Most of you who already listen will know I talk about our kids because collectively, I think we're responsible for them all. I work one-to-one. We have a bunch of coaches now who are absolutely lovely. And if you haven't heard their podcast, go back and listen to their various different experiences that they come to the Resilient Kid with. So let's get cracking. What is anxiety? Well, for me, anxiety is a word that we overuse a lot now. The actual literal term of anxiety is a physical response in our bodies to a worry or stress that we have in our brain. And so that's kind of handy, isn't it? Because once we know that's what anxiety is, it's not as scary as it sounds. I am going to use worry and anxiety interchangeable in the podcast for the simple reason is that is how it's used in society. So you know what I mean. But actually, anxiety is a physical response in our bodies. And when I work with kids and tell them that, they're like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. No, it's not. But we also know the extreme of that is panic attacks and worse. So, but we will use that interchangeable. So anxiety and worries, they set off a little alarm system. That we have an alarm system in our brain that keeps us safe, and the problem for many kids is that alarm, because our brain doesn't know the difference between a real threat, like I'm going to get run over crossing this road, or a perceived threat, that person doesn't like me. Our brain will perceive both of those exactly the same. Now, the way I talk about to younger kids about this alarm is we talk about our guard dog. So our fight and flight center for us adults, our amygdala, but for our kids, we talk about our guard dog. We talk about the guard dog barking when it's scary safe and scary dangerous. So there's things that can still make us feel unsafe, feel like a perceived threat, like a friend not texting you back, or, someone snubbing you in the playground, or getting in trouble off a teacher. None of them are dangerous. None of them are dangerous. None of them are a threat to life. However, our brain, our guard dog, perceives it exactly the same way. They don't know the difference between real and imaginary. Why we jump at scary movies? So, when that alarm sounds in our fight and flight center, in our guard dog, then what happens is, we often get a racing heart, the tummy gets upset, they might get sweaty palms, they might start to breathe really fast or shallow, shaky legs, wobbly knees. They can't concentrate, things like that. This is absolutely fight, flight, freeze, or fawn in action. And what we do know is quite often, you'll have heard it, whether you're an educator, whether you're a parent, you'll have heard a child say to you, I've got tummy ache, I don't feel well, I feel sick, my tummy's sore. And actually what we know from research now is when that fight and flight alarm signal goes off, that actually releases cortisol and adrenaline into our body. That's the physical response of a worry. That physical response is anxiety. And what we know is if we don't do something with that, it sits in their tummy or ours and causes physical pain. We've actually done research now and we know that it actually causes physical pain to them. And it's, as a parent, and I know I've done it, years ago, and I've gone, oh, you'll be okay. You're just a little bit worried. But actually now we know it does. So, it's really important that we hear them and we listen to what they're saying because it is causing them pain. It is uncomfortable for them at that time. So, I think as adults, it's really easy for us to dismiss it, knowing that they're worried, but not realizing actually that it can cause them quite uncomfortable sensations in their tummy. So, okay, how does anxiety show up for our kids? Well, the kind of things that I see and speak to parents about is school refusal, don't want to go to school, or actually, I'm not going to school. And actually, I think sometimes we think, you know, oh, just get to school. But actually, sometimes they really feel like they can't. School might be a threat for them. And actually, it's going against their survival system, their fight and flight system to go into school. So there's lots of things that we can do to help ease that transition. Other ways would be overthinking, that kind of rumination constantly. You probably see this kind of bedtime or a quiet time, where suddenly everything's quiet or they're just getting ready for bed and all these worries. They've suddenly not got any, distractions around. And you're like kind of, it's the end of the day for you guys and you're literally getting them in bed and you're thinking, 5 more minutes and I can just sit down and relax or whatever. And that's when it all comes out, isn't it? And actually, it's really hard as a parent sometimes because you've had a long old day to actually sit on the end of the bed and listen. But the more that we kind of do that and giving them, boundaries and guidelines, then the quicker we will get our adult time. So we usually find that overthinking, that rumination may be something that's happened during the day, maybe something that happened a few days ago, or something they've overheard on the radio quite often comes up now. That was particularly kind of during when the Ukraine conflict started, that was a lot of what was happening. Something they might have watched, seen on YouTube, those kind of things really, will feed in. And your child best. If anybody knows me, you are the expert with your child. What I will say to you is, with tech, and we had a really good Heather from Healthy Tech Families on last week as a guest. Go back and listen to that if you haven't. It's brilliant. She gives us really good kind of guidelines around technology and how to be healthy. And she's not one of these like ban, like absolutely not. But what I will say to you is, if your child is more susceptible, more sensitive to the kind of information coming in for them, be aware of that. How else does it show up? Outbursts, angry outbursts. And actually, we think, oh, well, if they're worried, why are they so angry? But actually, it's kind of two sides of the same coin for me. That frustration building up, that fear, that is the other side of it. Anger is the other side of anxiety. Absolutely for me. I will often see kids explode. They might have held it all together during the day because they know what's expected at school. They know how their teachers want them to behave and they're trying their best and they get home and you get in, and often, there's a real fear behind that for them. So again, it's about us being patient, but actually we don't often associate anger with worry. And actually it really is. Another one, perfectionism. They're constantly trying to be perfect. They look at what they've done wrong rather than what they've done right. So they might get 19 out of 20 in a spelling test, but then the one is what they're worried about. Rewriting work because it's not neat enough. Those kind of things. The hair, I notice a lot of, and this is girls and boys. Suddenly the hair needs to be cups, things like that. Any kind of sign of perfection is them trying to control some kind of worry for themselves. The other thing as well is kind of separation anxiety. Now, this can come out in various ways. Going into school, they don't want to leave you. And also for educators, we all know those kids who hang off you all day. And when you're going for your lunch, like it's quite hard sometimes for them to transfer to like a lunchtime supervisor, one of the dinner ladies, and they just want to be with you because they feel safe. You're their safe person, which is beautiful, isn't it? That you know that. But actually, as well, as parents, it's trying to get them into school. They don't want to leave you. Maybe they don't want to go to after school clubs. Maybe they don't want to do extracurricular, like try new sports, dance, that kind of thing. Don't want to do parties. Or if they do, they they're hanging off you like a little limpet, bless them. Sleepovers, they don't want to do sleepovers. And sometimes I've had it where they don't want to do sleepovers with grandparents, and the grandparents take that really personal. Well, why don't they? And it's like, it's not about you. It's not about you, grandma. You're amazing. It is about just making them feel secure and safe and things like that. So yeah, that separation anxiety is kind of kicks up another level. And then another one, watch out for the what ifs. But what if that happened? What if that happened? What if somebody broke in our house? What if you got run over? What if you didn't come home from your business trip? Things like that. That's hard, because they're constant. They're little questions that are running around their head constantly on a loop. Those kind of rumination thinking patterns. I'm going to give you kind of a really good example, like an example that I've worked with, to just so you can see it. Probably let's take it to the extreme. So I had a young student who crying on the way in, was really, really difficult, didn't want to leave mom at the school gates. And it was really hindering kind of their school experience, which we always want to be a positive one. It was hindering mum and dad. Mum and dad couldn't really go out very much because it was always that constant, I don't want you to go, and things like that. And then again, sleepover with the grandparents. And it was really impacting the family. They were constantly looking out for their child and walking on eggshells around what kind of things they were all doing together. And it was such a shame. And it really attached to mom. The student was really attached to the mom. And actually they came to me and said, like, they're not very old. They're still in primary. We really need to kind of get this sorted. Do you think you can help? And we did various different things. But and I was reminded of this last week. I rocked up to a school that I work in every week with various different students. And I just happened to go a little bit early. Traffic wasn't bad. Pulled into the car park and seen this little person, skip into school. When I say skip, I mean literal. Skip into school, smile on the face, with the friends. There is no issue at all. Now, you take that back 12 months ago. I no longer see them because they don't need me. But you take that back 12 months ago. We had a TA go out and meet them. They were having weekly sessions with me. I was having sessions with parents. And actually, the shift was just heartwarming. It was absolutely beautiful. And they'd done hard work to get there, as had the parents, as had the school support. It was really great. They all took on the advice that I gave. And I think what I would say to you is, with anxiety, I'm going to give you some tips, but actually we are the holders of their anxiety often. And I'm going to come on to tell you a little bit more around that. But let's give you some tips to reversing anxiety, because we know anxiety can be crippling. When children worry and they're getting themselves stressed, it can be crippling, not just for them, but for the family. So let's kind of go through a few little tips to help. So first of all, name it. Okay. So it looks like the way I talk to the kids who've done work with me, because I've gone, I teach them about the brain. I teach them what is happening in their body. We look at their thinking patterns, etc., etc. So, but there is no reason why you can't talk to them about their brain. It's something that all our coaches do, and it's fundamental for the way that we work with kids, because once we know how our brain works, it actually all makes sense to them. And we've done this as young as 2 and 3. So, anyone can do. But what I would say is, it looks like you're really worried today. It looks like your guard dog is barking loud today. Really name it. Tell me what you initially, often kids don't understand what they're feeling. And you can say, are you okay? You look worried. You seem like, you're breathing fast. You're clenching your fist. Name it, tell them. what's happening or what your perception is. And then they will either agree and they can recognize it, or they might say, no, I just feel really angry. Or, so it's really good that if you start to, it's what we call kind of that emotional literacy, talk about how they feel and expand that vocabulary around their emotion. So naming it to tame it is a really, really good way of doing that. The other thing is, if they are very worried in the moment, like, then what I always suggest to parents or educators is you start to breathe really deeply. So we know that fight and flight center is calmed down the fastest if we breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. So I often, and this doesn't matter what age my client is, they can be 84, which I do have clients that are 84. Breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. I will exaggerate my breathing because innately, as humans, we can't help but copy. And that just starts to bring our children back down a little bit, because in that moment, when they are worried, when they are angry, we cannot talk to them. We need to get them to calm down before we do anything else. Their brain is not talking to, each department of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we make our rational decisions, where we regulate our emotions. We know, if you've listened to this podcast before, that doesn't develop until they're in the 20s. So actually, at that moment when they're so upset, it's not even connected to that fight and flight center. It's not connected to the part of the brain that holds their experiences, their memories. We are just literally living on survival of fight and flight. And so what we want to do is get them to calm down so that we can reconnect those departments of the brain. And then we can have that conversation, whether they've been angry, whether they've been upset, or it does not matter. Wait until they're calm. Now, one thing I will say to you is it takes a young person, if they have been angry, if they have flipped their lid, which is the technical term when their brain is not engaged in all departments. It takes their body physically to get rid of that adrenaline, cortisol, and completely calm down 60 to 90 minutes. So you imagine if somebody has flipped their lid for whatever reason in class, it is more likely to happen again in the next hour if we don't do something about those superfuels running around their body, that adrenaline and cortisol. They are more likely at home to be wound up by, siblings in that next hour if we don't do something about getting rid and dispersing those superfuels and really calming down them and helping them regulate. And it is up to us as adults to help them regulate. That's our job. Keep them safe, help them regulate. That's our job. And it's funny, I had a conversation yesterday with a parent, and this is a question I ask a lot of my parents. What do you want for them? And they say, oh, we just want them to be happy. And I say, happy or safe? And they go, well, both. And I go, it's not your job to keep him happy. It's their job, their responsibility. We have no responsibility other than our own happiness for that. But it is our job to keep them safe. It is our job to help regulate them. Of course, we can do lots of things that might influence their happiness, but it's not our job to make them happy. It's theirs. And actually, we need to teach that to them. So that's kind of, I think that's really important that we think about the physical effects. So when they've calmed down, when we've kind of done some deep breathing, when we've, and there's various different things that you can do. And we've just finished a booklet, a freebie booklet with loads and loads of tips of what you can do. So like one of my biggest things, if I've got a child that's really, really upset, I am going to deep breathe in front of them. I am going to check in with them. I am probably going to give them a hug. If they're open to it, I will ask, do you need a hug right now? Because that physical touch between two will calm them down really quickly. If you're calm, if you're not calm, don't go near them, because they will pick up on you immediately. So it's really important. Our responsibility is to stay calm. But if I can, I get them outside. I get them doing something physical. Even if I just get them to put the wrists under cold water, all of that is a reset for the nervous system. Then we can move on to how, why this has happened. What is it? What can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again? And how I do that really is evidence gathering. So I get them to play like little detective. Okay, is that true? Tell me, what's the evidence? Where's the facts around that? Because is this just a thought that has led to this feeling? Can we change that thought? Is there evidence? Is there evidence that your friend has fell out with you? Is there evidence your teacher doesn't like you? Okay, tell me what that is. Okay, have you talked to them about this? Really get them to kind of really problem solve around it. What's the worst that could happen? Okay, I get that. And I could see why you're really worried about that. What's most likely to happen? Oh, okay. So really looking at the evidence, because quite often what happens is those thoughts are running around our head, sets off that anxiety in the body. And actually, it's just a thought. And can we change that thought? Can we reframe that thought? Have we got evidence? If it is that a friend is being horrible, okay, what are we going to do about that? Let's go and speak to them. Let's go and speak to a teacher. It's really important that they look for evidence, because the brain will look for evidence in both directions. It will always, if their thought is, people don't like me, I'm not good enough, their brain will look for evidence to back that up. So what we do is reframe it and look for the fact and then reframe that. Actually, was your teacher just stressed today? Shall we have a chat with her? Was your friend preoccupied? Were they just playing with somebody different today? And then reframing that for them. And then the brain will look for the positives. It will look for those opportunities. So it's really important that as adults, we teach them that reframing as well. The other thing that I would say to you is routine is really important. Any child that is susceptible to worry a lot or get anxious is often because they don't feel safe. And routines and looking after basic needs like, have they eaten? Have they drank enough today? Have they got enough sleep last night? For me, I always look at basics first. Always, always. And actually, having a snack or having a drink really helps just ground the nervous system as well. That's a good little top tip. If somebody is, let's get you a drink. Let's get you a drink of water. Let's have a snack, sit down, think about, and then we'll have a chat just to calm them down. So I always look at the basics first. Sleep is massive, has a massive impact on worry. But being predictable in our routine helps kids feel safe. So and I'm not saying 5 o'clock every night you have to have your dinner. Of course not. But if you do regularly have it at a certain time, do they have do they know what's coming? Can they preempt it? Okay, we're going to set the table. Then, somebody's going to get the water. Then we're going to have dinner. That is a predictable routine for them. That's what keeps them safe. They're going to have a shower or a bath. They're going to get in bed. They're going to read a story. That is a predictable routine. It doesn't matter so much, usually, that the timings might change a little bit. It's having that predictable routine that is really important, because it helps them feel safe. They can predict it. Our brain is just a predicting machine, really. And when it is thrown a curveball, like tonight after school, we're going to go to Nana's and we're going to have dinner there, then you pick them up and go, oh no, we're not going to Nana's now. And that's it. Because we think, oh, well, we can't go because, Nana's going out or something's happened or whatever. They then start, if they're sensitive to worry, that's when they start to panic. So it's things like that. Yes, absolutely. And things change, but talk them through that process. Do you know what? We can't go to Nana's tonight because guess what? The cat has had to go to the vet, so Nana's not going to be in. So I'll tell you what we can do. We're going to rearrange it. And let's have a look at what night we can go. So I'm sorry about, shall we go home and make dinner? So you kind of walking them through that process of why that's happened and what's next. So they've kind of got it and you're walking them through. and then on to the next step. Okay. So that's really, that predictable routine is important. Now, what I will say to you, and this is probably the most important with anybody who is struggling with this, but particularly our youngsters, as we finish the podcast today, is they look at us to see if they're safe. And if we wobble, they think they're not safe. So, for instance, one of the biggest, I told you about that student before, one of the biggest kind of things I said is to the parents, you need to not hesitate at the gate. It has to be matter of fact, because the minute you hesitate, the minute you start this bargaining between going to school and I'll get you a treat later, or, the minute that we start kind of going, oh, don't worry, stay here, blah, 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 they then think, but I'm not safe because if I was safe, you would just take me in, you would just let me go, and they start to question then. And so what I would say is we need to be very firm. So that predictability is really good. This is what's going to happen today. I'm going to hand you over to your TA, or you're going to meet your friend, and then you're going to go into school. I'm going to go to it, but guess what? I'll see you after school. I'll pick you up, whatever it is. But you have to be quite matter of fact, because the minute we hesitate, and it is totally understandable that we do, by the way, because we hate to see our kids upset. It feels personal. It feels like, why can't I take this away for them? But actually, we need to do this themselves. And you do that smart by small steps, Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk you to the door, but you're going to go into the classroom yourself. I'm going to walk you into the playground. You're going to walk across yourself or with your friend. So you can do it in small increments, things like that in that particular example. But anything at all that they're worried about. So, for instance, I think a really good one to help with this is when you're in a restaurant and we order for our kids. And I think we just do that automatically sometimes, but actually it's really important that they order for their kids. So, for example, if they're a little bit shy or they don't want to, or they're nervous about it, okay, well, tell the waiter, waitress what you want, point on the menu if they can do that. Or you say, I'll order your food, you order your drink. That's the next kind of step. And then, okay, you can order now. I'm going to order, you order. So you're giving your order so they can see that they're absolutely safe. Because as an adult, as a safe, trusted adult, and this goes for in school or at home, they will look to us to see if they're safe. We need to model that. We need to make sure that we are confident. We need to make sure that they know they're safe and that they can try these scary things while they're with us. They're a safe person. So it's really important that we make sure we are giving off that idea of, you can do this. Absolutely. Of course you can, And that's not saying that we don't give them a big cuddle. Oh, you're being really brave today. I know this is hard for you, but guess what? You can do it. And that doesn't change. That does not change, no matter how old they are. And I will come on to the teens next week, but even my 17-year-old, she's got a tough few months. She's got A-levels, she's got driving tests, and it's hard. And so what I'll say to her is, I know this is tough, darling. I know this is hard. And this is going to be a really hard 3 months, but I know you can do this. And I'm here. I'm here for you every step of the way. So it doesn't change from when they're, 3 to young adults. Okay, let's do a little quick recap, and then I'll tell you kind of what we've got coming up next for you. So we've talked today about anxiety and how it is a physical reaction in the body. We've talked about that fight and flight center, or what we call our dog with our kids, and how it's really important that they recognize what's happening in their body and also how they can do something about it. I talked a little bit about the kind of ways that can show up, whether it's anger, perfectionism, avoidance, overthinking, or those kind of negative thinking patterns. And then also how we reverse anxiety in our kids. And it's really important. Deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth is really important. Getting outside in nature is a reset. So if you can walk to and from school, that helps. Physical trampolines are brilliant. anything that's moving that cortisol and adrenaline out of the body is absolutely brilliant. Water is amazing. And then also look for the evidence. Get them to, once they've calmed down, get them to have a look at the evidence and then reframe it for them, and make sure we're checking their basics, because there is nothing worse than getting in from school. They're hungry, they're tired, they've probably not drank enough today, and they just flip their lid really quickly. And we know that happens. So get the basics covered, and that will really help make their, fight and flight center feel safe. And then lastly, they're going to look to us to make sure they're safe. And we need to reinstill that they can take these brave steps while we're in their corner cheering. Okay, so if this resonates with you and you'd love more tools and strategies to help your kid build confidence and really reverse that anxiety, then keep a lookout for the freebies that's coming. We've got a brochure download, and also then we've got a course coming up, Reversing Anxiety for Kids. I'll be diving deep into all of this over the course. Get your hands on the freebies. So have a look at the link underneath. We've got a brochure there that you can just download for free. There's loads of tips, goes into more detail than I could do in half an hour. And yeah, thanks for listening. If you have any worries at all, if there's any kind of, situations that are coming up with your child, hit reply on the newsletter. Make sure you're on the newsletter. Hit reply on the newsletter. It comes straight to me. It doesn't go to Chantel, our VA, or any of the coaches. It comes straight to me. We'll answer that. Check out the Facebook group. You can go in there. That's the Resilient Kid Facebook group if you want there's loads of resources in there. But click on the link and get your free download top tips for reversing anxiety in your kid. Lots of love from us to your family. Take care.